All right, today's video is going to be a little bit of a change up. I still have more stuff to cover regarding the feeding of snakes and what you should be feeding them and how you should be feeding them and what all that sort of stuff. But I want to take a break from it today and get into something else. And it's a question from Sheba Fox on YouTube. And that question was basically, how do you know when to pair your snakes? What's the best way to do it? How do you do it if you don't have an ultrasound? And that's a pretty easy answer, but I'll go into it a little more in this video. The first question they had was, do you do temperature drops? Do you only breed in the spring and in the late winter and the spring? All that stuff that everybody talks about. And the first thing is, there really is not a season for your snakes. Your snakes, I think my first clutch last year, because that's the last full year we had, so that's what I'll talk about, the 2023. My first clutch was laid in January. And this girl, this big girl that I seem to be showing every single video, she was born in March. So she hatched out in March, so her eggs were laid in January. I had clutches that were laid, let's see, let's take a walk over here to the this is my last this was my last snake that was, I think, my last clutch of the year, and these hatched in I believe December is when this snake hatched. So I was getting clutches throughout the whole entire year. That last snake was so late that I think these snakes, this clutch here, the ones that were the last black exanthic clutch I had, which was my second clutch of 2024, hatched were laid or hatched something within a month or so of my last clutch of 2023. So you're going to have clutches the whole entire year. I do not breed seasonally because when your female's ready to go, she's ready to go. I do not do temperature drops, but I live in Pennsylvania. So naturally this room, in the summer without any help, typically stays at 80 degrees or so. If you can see this right here, right now it's 77.7. There's nothing running in here. It's so hot outside. And this room is sort of insulated, I guess, a little bit. It's mainly underground. As you can see, there's one little window out there, and that's most of the rest of this room is underground, except for maybe 2 feet of the back side of it. So it stays pretty insulated. But the temperature in here still, it would be freezing cold in here probably if I didn't have the heater running in the winter. So the temperatures naturally drop. I try to keep this room around 75-ish or so in the winter. I have to use this gas heater that I had a plumber install to do that. But it's naturally going to be colder. I don't try to keep this room at 80 degrees consistently throughout the whole winter because it just costs too much. I think my gas bill in the winter, at times, depending on how high I need to crank that, can be up to $400 or $500 for the whole entire house. But this itself probably chews up $100 to $200 worth of gas, natural gas, in a month if it's super cold. Luckily, that didn't happen this year. So I don't drop the temperatures on purpose. I just kind of allow it to drop as it needs to be. This room is typically around 75 degrees or so in the winter, 80 degrees or so in the summer. So I do not drop temperatures on purpose in the winter. It's just kind of natural. As far as we covered that, how do you know when your snake's ready to breed? If you don't have an ultrasound, you don't. There's really no way to tell. The way I had done it, and I just purchased an ultrasound last year, so this is my 5th year breeding. I don't know if it was worth the money. I'm still on the fence about it. I still don't rely on it heavily. I know what I'm doing. I'm not an expert at it, but it's not very hard. I can find follicles on most snakes within, 10 seconds of me putting the ultrasound device on the snake's stomach. I don't rely on it though. I kind of got in the habit when I started this of just taking the male, throwing the male on the tub with the female, letting them do their thing. If they get a lock, they get a lock. If they don't, they don't. I take them out and he goes to the next female. So if you don't have an ultrasound, there's no way for you to know if that female is going to go or not. This female, for instance, and she keeps getting shown frequently as well, she has been at breeding size for quite a bit of time. And I think her follicles are finally starting to develop. They were at 20 the last time I measured, which was probably a month ago at this point. She's starting to look a little lumpy. She's had, I mean, those are all locks. All those check marks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 locks between 2 different snakes at this point. Now, I did start pairing her up to a different male with probably the last 4 of those locks because nothing was happening with her over the course of the whole entire year of 2023 with a different male. Now, the male from last year sired like 3 or 4 clutches for me, so I don't know what the issue is with these 2 snakes, but she bred to another male, a first-time male this year, and she like readily accepted him basically. So I don't know what it was. It's if you have the luxury of having backup males or other options, that's a good thing to do. But you don't know. There's no way of telling when your female's ready to go if you do not have an ultrasound. Basically, I would say, so again, let's go back to this pied head ultramale female. So she's a little over a year old, right? And she's at what people would consider to be breeding size. I have not measured her follicles yet. I will probably do that the next time I get out the ultrasound machine just to see. Because if she has follicles, well, that means she's ready to breed. If she doesn't, then I probably won't even attempt to breed her because with her being a year old, I don't expect her to lay a clutch, but I don't know that. That is actually something I do not know. I will tell you guys whether or not I know the answer to something. And this would be the first time that I had a female that's ready to breed within a year of her being born. And it's kind of new territory for me. So I will ultrasound her to see if there's anything any follicles growing in there. But she's going to be a good example of, well, she'll probably be a year, almost a year and a half by the time I actually get a male in there with her. Is a year and a half a good point in time to breed? Well, if they're the right size and they're the right age and they're growing follicles, then they're ready to breed. I would assume for most people out there, your snakes at the very least are probably, females, are probably going to be 2 years old before they breed, if then. I typically like to wait until my females are closer to 1,800 grams if they're growing at a steady rate before I start breeding them, because I have personally found that usually the females that are a little bit bigger when I breed them the first time usually have better clutches. The females that I've had previously bred that were on the smaller end, and some people use the 1,400 gram weight range as like typically when they start pairing females. And I've seen people say that they breed them at 1,200 or breed them at 1,000, and they've gotten clutches out of them. And I'm sure you can, I'm sure they did, but I'm sure they weren't big. The problem with snakes, ball pythons, is you don't know what you're going to get out of those snakes anyways. I have 3,000 gram females that had a bunch of locks that had disaster clutches where nothing came out of it, where all the eggs. I had this female who, she didn't have a bunch of locks, and so this year's going to be something different. She's 3,000 grams, never been bred before. Every single egg she laid last year was bad. So just because your snake's big doesn't mean it's going to lay a healthy clutch. The caveat with that is I can't imagine that having a bigger snake isn't probably better for you when you're breeding. If you're close to that 1,500 gram range and your female is kind of stuttering a little bit with eating meals and not putting on a lot more weight, I'd be okay with pairing her up with a male, because it gets a male in there. I've actually even had females that kind of stopped around that weight range, stopped feeding, where I'd put a male in and they actually started chomping down food again. That actually happened with this DG clown female who's hiding back here. She actually stopped eating for a while. She was actually the biggest of all the 4 DG clowns I had, and she stopped eating for probably a couple months. And she was at 1,400 grams already, but I was like, well, I'm not ready to breed her yet. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to put a male in there because she's not eating. Maybe that kickstarts some feeding responses. And it actually did. I put a male in. They actually had 1 lock. I've only seen 1 lock in there since then, and this has been probably 2 months. But she has been feeding regularly since then. Every week, she's taking a small rat or an ASF, whatever I can get in there for her. I usually don't breed rats to being medium-sized to be able to feed them live because she's a live eater. But she's eating every week, so sometimes that can stimulate, pairing her up with a male can stimulate breeding. And this actually happened to this girl too, which is my super OD DG het pied female. Same thing, she grew fantastic up to the 1,200 gram range. She had then just stopped. I think she probably got around 1,400 or so. I wasn't ready to breed her yet. I put a male in. I have 1 confirmed lock, and then she started eating like a pig. So you don't know when your females are ready to go. Males, it's easy. You can technically pop them. Sometimes they'll produce sperm plugs, but typically a male, once you're around a year old, 600 to 800 grams, they're ready to go. Now, I also tend to wait a little bit more with them. I usually don't go breed them below 800 because they can go off food. And if they don't have a really good body condition when you start to breed them and they do go off food, you're probably going to have to pull them out of the breeding rotation if they're starting to lose weight and if they end up not eating for a while. My lightning pied male, this is the male I bred 2 years ago. I just can't get him back on food regularly. Doesn't matter what it is. I've tried every type of rodent. I've tried different tubs. I've tried, making it more humid in here, less humid. He'll just go a couple weeks, eat some mice, stop eating for a month or 2. He'll eat a different prey type, and on and off. So I try to make sure that when the males are starting to breed, that they're at a healthy weight, because there's a good chance, I would say probably at least half my males will go off food at some point during the breeding process, and they usually don't go back on food until I stop pairing them up and give them a couple weeks or a month or so off. So there's no exact science to any of it when you're pairing them up. The way I handled it when I first started doing this was, well, this male's a good size, this female's a good size, they're both ready to go, just throw them in there and see what happens. And you'll see them lock. Usually when they lock, they're locking for a few hours, if not longer. I've had snakes lock up for a day, and they just sit there locked up for that whole entire time. So you pair them up, you see what happens. But I would say, I like my females to be 1,600 grams or so before I start breeding them. My males, probably half that, 800 grams or so. The bigger you can get them, the better. I think that gives you a better chance of success, but it's not like a hard and fast rule. You can have a small snake, a small female, get you an 8-egg clutch. This girl, this bamboo black pastel head ultramel that just had my most recent clutch, I didn't even think she was going to lay eggs this year, because she was the other female I had from last year that never did anything. And all of a sudden she dropped eggs. Now she dropped 6 eggs, but she was, I think, in the 2,500 gram range when she laid. So she was I consider that a big snake, and to only get 6 eggs out of that kind of stinks. And to me, I would have been just as happy if she was 1,600 grams and laid 6 eggs, rather than waiting until she got up to 2,500 grams and laid 6 eggs. Now, that being said, if she was 1,600 grams and laid 6 eggs, she probably would have lost a larger portion of her weight. Typically, let's say an egg's 100 grams, she would have lost a third of her body weight. She would have been 1,000 grams by the time those eggs were laid. Whereas now, she was 2,600 grams and she laid 6 eggs, and she's still 2,000 grams. It's only a fifth of her body weight. So because she was bigger, it's easier to put the weight back on after they lay because they're eating bigger meals. So, you know, there's a lot of math you need to kind of play with when you're doing this. Again, there's no fast and hard rules to any of it, but you just need to be smart about it. I've had females lay eggs, and you know, they weren't great eaters to begin with, and they lay eggs, and they take long times to kind of put their weight back on. This girl's a good example. She had a fantastic clutch last year, DG Super Inchy Butter. Fantastic clutch for me. She's eating regularly, but now my yellow clips are ASFs. She only likes ASFs. She usually takes 1 a week. You know, I don't have a bunch of adult ASFs to feed her, so it's usually kind of like a medium size-ish ASF, and that's what she eats. And I can't get her on anything else, so it's taken her a long time to put weight back on. If I decide to keep her, you know, and breed her again, she may not be ready to breed till the end of this year, and she laid a clutch probably in the fall of last year, so she might be out of the rotation for a whole year and a half before I actually get eggs out of her a second time. Whereas a female that's just always ready to eat and gets back on food right away, you could get them, you know, breeding again within 6 months. This lightning pipe girl, she laid, what was it, last week, and she just took her first meal today already. So she's ready to go. She took a rat. You know, hopefully she gets back onto food faster than she did last time, because there was a 2-year gap between the first and second time I bred her. Hopefully it's a little quicker, and maybe by the end of the year she's starting to get paired up again. Maybe we can have a clutch from her the same time of the year this year. You know, this will be the first time for this lightning pipe female to lay eggs, and hopefully by next week we have some out of her. And we'll see. Hopefully she was a pickier eater than the other one. She's only ASFs, so I'm hoping that she's a little easier to deal with, you know, being hungry and hopefully having a big healthy clutch. So great question, Sheba Fox. This stuff's hard. Like, it's hard, but it's not hard. And I hate saying that it's hard, because it's not. It's just reading and watching videos and paying attention and kind of listening to the animals. And I don't know if sometimes it's easier for me because I kind of understand animals pretty well. I understand the behaviors and the cycles and the you know, all that sort of stuff. So I don't know. It might not come naturally to some people, which I guess I don't know if a video like this even makes any sense to them. And I don't know if there's an easier way for me to break it down either. So let me know if this info actually helped, whether it needs to be dumbed down more. And if you do need it dumbed down more, in the comments, sort of explain what needs dumbed down. Because there are times where people ask questions and I'm kind of like, I don't really know how to approach this in a different way that would make sense to them. So make it as basic as you can, explain it a little more about what you need to hear or see so that it makes more sense to you. Because this stuff isn't very hard. It's not rocket science. There's obviously a lot of people that do. There's more people that breed ball pythons than are rocket scientists. So it's not very hard. I think people just get nervous about it, and I think they make it harder than it is. So hopefully this helped. And again, if you have more questions about this or need more clarification, please comment below and tell me exactly what you need in a follow-up video for this. And please remember to like and subscribe.